Welcome to Higher Ed Matters. In this episode, we interviewed Dr. Stefanie Niles, president of Cottey College. She didn't rise to her presidency along traditional paths. She's an enrollment manager at heart. Her fascinating story of how she got to where she is today and how her skills and experience make her an excellent campus leader is not one to be missed. Let's get started.
Dr. Niles, I would love to learn more about your career trajectory. I know probably as a child you did not dream of one day being a college president, or maybe I don't know, but I would love to know a little bit more about just your career trajectory, what that looked like, and then what led you to the presidency at Cottey College.
Sure. So I did not dream as a child of being a college president or even a chief enrollment manager. I know I went through being a ditch digger and a lawyer and a journalist and a whole array of careers, but it was actually by the time I got to college that I started to think about a career in higher education. And that was actually because I transferred twice as an undergraduate student. So that really put me in this space of thinking, how does this enrollment process work? I went through three very different processes, applying to very different types of schools for different reasons. And so it really made me think about why students make choices, how schools reach out to them as they are in different places in their own search process. And so that led me into internships in enrollment in college, both at the institution I attended and graduated from, the University of Virginia, but also doing some externships, as they called them, sort of mini internships during breaks at other institutions near my home. I took a detour when I went to graduate school. I thought maybe I want to be a dean of students. So I spent a lot of time working in student services and student affairs type work. Spent 1 year working in residence life. I have tremendous respect for those individuals who work in residence life because after a year I realized that was not the right position for me. And part of it, though, was because I was still drawn to enrollment and to that type of work. And actually, if I'd stayed at the University of Tennessee, where I spent that 1 year, I had arranged with the admission office to do a 5-hour-a-week internship type experience, even though I was working as a professional, just to keep my hand in. But as it was, I ended up getting my first role in enrollment and proceeded through the process. I spent 12 years at DePauw University, worked my way up from being an assistant director to an associate director, senior associate director, director, dean, and eventually vice president for admission and financial aid, and then served in that similar capacity at an additional 4 liberal arts institutions before taking my current role. It was probably when I pursued my doctorate. I went through the executive doctoral program at the University of Pennsylvania. And in one of our first classes, one of our professors basically went around the room asking why people were in the program. And a few people said they wanted to be a college president. I actually was not one of those who said that at the time. But he, as everyone finished, he looked at the crowd and he said, I think most of you are lying because you're all here because you want to be college presidents. That's what this program's known for. And I had to say I was one who admitted deep down it was something I was thinking about at that point in time. But I would say that experience culminating with the ways that I was growing as a professional and the ways I really found myself engaged in the work of the institution, certainly as it related to enrollment and the space that I was working in, but I was really intrigued by all the facets of the institution and how they interfaced with each other and the ways that they work to support students. So I started looking selectively at presidencies and really just was thrilled that this opportunity came to me last spring. It was such a nice combination of all of the roles that I held, the types of institutions at which I worked in many ways gave me a background and or a skill set that's prepared me well to be the president of Cottey College. So I'm thrilled to be here.
Excellent. Very good. During this transition now, based on your background in enrollment management and now as a college president, what has been the biggest surprise or maybe challenge that you've encountered in your first few months?
Ooh, that's a tough question. There's, as I've said to individuals, being a first-time college president is a little bit like drinking from a fire hose. And so there are probably not very many days, frankly, when something doesn't surprise me. Simply because while I am obviously very, very comfortable in the enrollment space, and I have certainly worked closely with colleagues whose expertise is in other areas and learned much from them, Certainly I am, the ultimate decision maker, right? With lots of input and guidance and support from a very strong team and from certainly a supportive board of trustees. But I have not found myself as the ultimate decision maker for in the institution, of course, in roles that I had previously held. So there's a lot that changes. I sat in senior leadership team meetings for 15, 16 years, right, as a member of a president's cabinet or council or senior leadership team. But coming here and running that meeting for the first time, I found myself right in it. Just that alone, I was in a different position. I was having to engage my staff in different ways. I was having to look for and ask for feedback and draw them out at different times. And so even things as simple as the role I was playing in meetings to, certainly dealing with much more intensive challenges that are faced at the institution has all been a transition, a very welcome transition. Again, I feel like in many ways I knew what I was to expect, and I found that a lot of that to be true, but certainly the level of intensity perhaps is at times more so than I was aware of. I think another piece too is the advancement piece, right? So, oftentimes chief advancement officers have also made their way into presidencies. While that has not been my primary role, there's a lot of transferable skills, right, to the way in which we are asking students and their families to make a 4-year commitment to the institution, similar to the ask that one does in asking one to give money or to support their institution. It is certainly different, and it's a different audience. There are nuanced differences, but there are also similarities in how one needs to listen, how one needs to position and ask to be responsive to that individual's needs, to be thinking about the bigger picture for the institution, as well as how to work with that individual, that it's an ongoing relationship. It doesn't just happen overnight. So I think that too has allowed me to bring those transferable skills into this role.
So earlier you mentioned NACAC, and if you could just elaborate or talk a little bit more about the role that NACAC and particularly your presidency played in your career.
I really think that I may not be here in this presidency right now had I not been the president of NACAC. I think that it really allowed me to gain a skill set and to be able to position myself to future employers to be able to demonstrate that more global thinking, that thinking across an institution. NACAC is obviously not an institution, but in that role and essentially chairing the board, or being at the time, as it was called, president, I was thinking about all the needs of the association in conjunction with of course, the chief executive officer and the staff. But I think being able to think like that, to act on the decisions necessary in that particular space. I certainly served NACAC at a particular point in time that was challenging for the association, and I think challenging for the admission profession. And so the opportunities I had to be a public figure, to speak on behalf of the association, to speak on issues generally around admission, marketing, financial aid, allowed me to also then demonstrate that I had the ability to represent an institution in what are often very public spaces and to many different audiences and constituencies. So I am so grateful for the opportunity that I had with NACAC, certainly not only because it has positioned me to, I believe, be effective in this role, but it certainly grew my network. It grew my understanding and my abilities to work with a board, as sitting on the board, and to interface with the staff. It's just given me different perspectives that I can also bring to this particular task.
So as a president with extensive enrollment management background, how much are you involved currently in enrollment strategies and enrollment marketing strategy development?
So that's a really good question, and actually one that I've asked myself a number of times over the last 7.5 months. I would say that when I started, I was working really hard to not be the chief enrollment manager and to demonstrate to my team that I wouldn't get in their way. Frankly, I probably worked a little too hard to do that, because I don't think that I, in those first few months, did as good of a job as I should have of equipping myself with the knowledge I needed to be most supportive and to be successful in this role. And so I've worked to transition that. I'm really fortunate to work with a team who truly does not feel threatened by my knowledge, but is really welcoming. And I'm so grateful to them. My director of marketing the other day said to me that he has felt seen by somebody who knows the background and the experience. And that really was meaningful to me, again, because he saw us working together more as a partnership, and that I was able to bring that perspective to the work. And I believe that my interim vice president for enrollment feels similarly. She also indicated her excitement at the opportunity for us to partner together and to share that knowledge. I think I'm also able to, in a collaborative way, to help push them to think about things a little differently. They work here. My team has worked off of a communication plan that is more intuitive than perhaps physical. And so I've asked them to, bring that information from their, talented minds onto paper and just be able to really see it. I always found I'm a visual person. When I see something, I can understand differently what's missing, where are the gaps, where are overlaps, how could we streamline and approach differently. So we're working together now to think differently about that communication plan. I'm just trying to bring my experience of designing those plans at multiple institutions to advance the enrollment effort to be able to support and engage the staff differently here. So I think I'm safe to say that my enrollment and marketing teams feel that it is a very good partnership, but it is one certainly where I play a different role, but I think that I can contribute while also giving them very much the space to manage themselves effectively, which they are very capable of doing.
Kind of the flip side of your interesting path to the presidency, right? You have all of these varied skills and experiences that have benefited you, but I think that also having those experiences gives you a unique empathy for the people that report to you that do similar roles, where sometimes those roles that are very there's a lot of pressure on those roles from a president perspective, and you have this whole understanding of all the things foundationally that it takes to get there.
So, for example, this month month of February is all about the budget process. And so we've had lots of meetings relative to setting the budget for next year. And of course, like many institutions, enrollment tuition revenue is critical to how we look to the budget for next year and subsequent years. And so, it's February. The class is still very much coming together. There's still lots of unknowns. And so as the interim VP for enrollment keeps being asked, well, what's the class going to look like? So this is the point in time where I would say, let me look into my crystal ball and what it's going to look like. Because we can have all the predictive data, but we all know that COVID has really changed how those tools can help us, that this set of 3 to 4 years, every class is different. The impact of the pandemic has been different on them. And so I think that, we have to utilize those for the what they can give us, but also keep in mind that there are so many unknowns that we have to plan for at this juncture.
Right. So you bring up a good point about metrics and trying to really estimate what the class is going to look like for the fall. And again, being 20 years in enrollment management, I'm right there with you in terms of just the anxiety that it could bring in the springtime. And everyone touts out May 1st as the day, but this still begs the question, what does it look like here in February, April, or March and April? But give us an idea of the type of metrics that you look at from a president's viewpoint, if you could.
I would say that they're not much different than what I looked at as a chief enrollment officer. So I think that I'm still at this point, 7 months in, trying to continue to understand what are the metrics that are of greatest value to me, of the greatest value to the board. How can I be most helpful? How can I have the best perspective on the class from this role, perhaps different than my former role? But at this point in time, I think there's a lot that I can gain from looking at a very similar set of metrics.
So, in thinking about the upcoming class, and really the future classes, I'm sure you're very aware of the enrollment cliff, coming up. And so how is your team planning for that impending enrollment cliff?
So I think here, it's not just the team. It's not just when you say team, it's not just the enrollment team. It's the institution's team. It's the broader institution really thinking about, and I would say we're starting this process, as I have now been through a pretty intensive fall where I did an expansive listening tour. Spent a lot of time talking. I probably met with 3/4 of all of our students, all of our faculty, almost all of our staff, many members of the Nevada community, members of our alumni board, of course, our board of trustees. Really spent some trying to understand the community so that we can best, frankly, address those questions. What do we value about the experience? Where is there opportunity for improvement? What needs and can change? What can we do so where that we are much more effective in what we currently do? So really tried to understand that from those, and now in a planning process to think about both our academic programs. What do our students want? What will best prepare them for the future? Are the programs we offer to them most relevant to the skills they'll need as graduates and eventually as career professionals in a host of fields? So I think it's incumbent upon us to continue to look at. Cottey was a 2-year institution until about a dozen years ago, and then started offering 4-year degrees. So we have, in terms of our degree offerings, grown dramatically in a short time period. And so I think also taking a look at what we're doing, do we need to differently or better fund some of those programs? And are we missing some key opportunities or elements in our academic curriculum that could move the institution forward and be better prepared to enroll the more of the shrinking group of students that we're going to see in the future?
So how often should those enrollment management strategies, so retention and recruitment strategies, how often should those be discussed or adjusted?
I think on an ongoing basis, right? I mean, we've seen students change so significantly, certainly over a 5 or 10-year period, but even over a 1-year period, particularly with the impact of the pandemic. We know that students have been impacted or affected in different ways. And so I think that understanding who our students are, what their needs are, that may be different from last year's entering freshmen or the entering first-year students of 5 years ago. I think it's really important that we think about the ways we reach out to students, the messages that are going to resonate with them, how we can communicate most effectively. And then on a retention side, all the things I just mentioned. It's an ongoing analysis of what we do, how we do it, and how students are responding to it, because I don't think we can afford to not be reconsidering our strategies each and every year.
Absolutely.
Which is not really how, enrollment management strategies of the past, right? Even when like Drew and I started our careers, forever ago, it wasn't something that was tended to in the moment type of way. And I think you're absolutely right. That's the only way we survive, right? is the constant attention to it.
I'll give you an example. During the pandemic, we here at Cottey, we eliminated all event programs. So we were we're in the state of Missouri. We were an earlier opener of our campus to welcome student visitors back, but we eliminated all events. And we still have not re-implemented events. And the thought process there is not related to COVID anymore, but is an event at Cottey truly representative of the student experience, which is so high touch and so personalized? Do students actually benefit from a much more personally tailored visit experience than a large-scale campus event? Now, that I think needs to be reconsidered, right? It's been in place now for a couple of years. And so I think we need to revisit, do we bring back one? We have a scholarship competition, for example, that students are doing individually, but there's something missed by not being here, right, with a group of other scholars, all competing and seeing your peers and getting to know perhaps your future classmates in this particular setting. So I think we want to continue to think about, are all those decisions made still impactful, again, as we continue to evolve. Now, we have put those monies back into, because Nevada is a bit of a rural environment and a bit more remote for many visitors. We actually put money towards a hotel stay for our students who are coming from a distance of over 100 miles. So we haven't eliminated the funds that went into events, but we've repurposed them in order to try and make it easier for students to still get here and to attract them to the campus. But I think that's a good example of something that needs to be reconsidered. Is that still the best decision relative to where we are and where students are right now?
And I can appreciate that it's somewhat of a catch-22, because in recruitment and retention, you want to stay nimble and be able to make changes on the fly or as needed. But sometimes those strategies take time, right? Especially if you're implementing in the middle of a cycle or you haven't seen the full impact that it can make. You want to kind of stay the course. But at the same time, if your competitors or if you're not seeing the ROI, then you want to make those changes. But it sounds like you've done some fantastic work in terms of creating new strategies, or at least assessing what's working and what isn't working.
Well, and again, credit to my staff here. I mean, that has been all of their work. I think part of my role is to ask those questions, right? Is this still the best strategy? What's telling us that this is most effective? What if we did this? How can we determine if it may be successful? So I think, certainly I want to be supportive of strategies in place, but I also want to be able to use my own knowledge and background to be able to push and challenge a little bit to perhaps think through if we are utilizing all of the data available to us most effectively.
So Dr. Niles, in your perspective, in your viewpoint, what is the most important thing for presidents to do when it comes to enrollment management?
I think about the presidents whom I have worked for, and I worked for 9 presidents over the course of my career as a chief enrollment officer. And I think about the ways that they were particularly helpful to me. I think about one president who I would say she didn't have an enrollment background, perhaps didn't fully understand all the facets of enrollment as a first-time president, but she always was willing to listen. She was a really good thought partner. She would ask good questions. She was always willing to brainstorm and was very responsive when I said I have a timely question, or I need to think through this more quickly, be trying to be nimble, right? And think about how to be responsive and strategic at the same time. So that I found really useful. I think about a president who would always say to the other members of the senior leadership team, whatever enrollment needs, help them out. Like, we all need to think about this as our job. And of course, I knew my colleagues were busy, and so only utilize them when they could be most effective and it would make a difference and they could see that difference being made. But I was grateful to that president for being, willing to challenge my fellow senior leadership team members in that way, and certainly then to them for stepping up to the plate, including the president. And I think, as president, another president would offer to write notes, to call students. If there was a particular group of students for whom we felt that would be an impact, then that individual was willing to do that. And I always really appreciated that. One of the things that I have done here is that as my schedule permits, I'll meet with any prospective student who comes to campus. Those meetings are 10 to 30 minutes, depending on the student and questions and how much they want to engage. But I believe it has been meaningful based on feedback I've had directly from those families or from the admissions staff as they're meeting with those students and families immediately afterwards. It just, to me, shows it's a reflection of the community here. This may not be an appropriate strategy or possible for every president, but I think here it's an important reflection of the community that everybody here cares about and to a certain extent has an involvement in the student experience. And I can demonstrate that as well. I'm still waiting for the first student who's going to reach out to me after the fact. I have given every one of them my card and said, follow up with me if there are things that I can help you with. So I'm still waiting for that return, but I have felt really good about those meetings.
Well, and I applaud you. That is fantastic. From a prospective student standpoint and their family to meet with the college president, I mean, that speaks volumes and is super impressive on a college tour, because that doesn't happen everywhere, and you know that. And so that definitely could push Cottey up above someone or some other school that they're looking at. But then also from a leadership standpoint on the campus, to show that you are willing to meet with prospective students when they come visit and lead by example. And that speaks volumes for your community. So I applaud you on that for sure.
Oh, thank you.
And so what advice do you have for presidents who don't have the enrollment management background that you have? What are some things that you would say to them?
Perhaps taking a step back, right? They want to talk with their enrollment officer and determine how they can be most impactful. I think it's educating oneself. When I did a program a number of years ago that my kids called it, so you want to be a president camp. But it was essentially, for leaders contemplating next steps in their career. And there was a small group of enrollment leaders there. And one of the things we put together was a document that was for new presidents. We saw it as a document for new presidents of the things that you should know, trends to be aware of, questions you might want to ask your chief enrollment officer, ways that you can engage with the enrollment program. So I think, just being open and being willing to be educated, I think goes a long way towards being supportive of that effort and being able to make a difference within the effort.
Drew and I come from working for college and universities in Missouri, and so we're familiar with Cottey College, and it is a really unique, small liberal arts kind of experience. I've been on the campus before, and you as a new president there, you have this huge opportunity to set this new vision, right? And I feel like the president is kind of like that vision setter. If you could write a headline for Cottey College that is on the front page of a newspaper 10 years from now, what would that headline read?
Oh my goodness. I guess, well, here are the things that I'm thinking about, right? I mean, I want to position our students to be most effective in their personal and professional lives. And so currently we have three tenets, which have been in place for a while, and I think very much continue to resonate. Leadership, social responsibility, and global awareness. And so into the curriculum and co-curricular experiences, we ensure that students are developing skills and attributes and are reflecting on how these tenets will play a role in their lives. And so I'd like to see those come to life. Maybe another piece to this, Cottey takes the, American Midwest Conference Championship. That's not all about winning, but obviously you also attract students who are part of certainly growing and expanding and certainly winning programs. And so being able to grow those programs, to bring on, talented student athletes, but also individuals of strong character who are, able to position Cottey within our, now first year in the conference, but in the future, really to be seen as that place where our students are competitive athletically and they're known to be of strong character as they compete with others. And I think that's very much where I am right now, is sort of on this cusp of working to position the institution for the future. For the first few months, I was asked, all the time, what's your vision for the future? Frankly, I thought it would have been almost irresponsible of me to answer it at that point because I was too new. I hadn't talked to enough people. I didn't have an understanding of the culture. And so I definitely now I'm in a different position. I have some thoughts. I feel like I have a really good understanding of the higher ed environment and the role that Cottey does and can play in it. And so now I want to work with the community to bring some of these ideas and concepts to life and determine how we can, be that institution which produces individuals really well equipped to enter graduate school, join the workforce, be successful in however they define success in the future.
Dr. Niles, it's been so great to chat with you today, and I loved hearing about your transition as the president at Cottey College, and it looks like and it sounds like you're doing amazing things, and just, the sky's the limit at this point. So just know that we are supporting you and excited for you and cheering you on as you lead the institution.
Well, thanks so much. I'm grateful to you both and for the opportunity to talk with you today. It's been a lot of fun.